Hello, welcome back to the 2024 Goodwood Festival of Speed. This is the second to last episode of our six-part series covering this legendary event. And we're going to talk about arguably the most legendary cars of the event. The Formula One cars, the open wheelers, the things that you know and love. And I must confess, I didn't get very good photos, at least of them stationary. In motion, 10 out of 10, perfect in my opinion. But I just didn't get their static shots walking through the pit. Maybe it's because there were too many crowds, or I just didn't get to make it to the Red Bulls thing or the Brooklyn's ring. But for one reason or another, I just didn't get many static pictures, which is a shame, because I wanted to see the Blue Ligier. I wanted to see the first Grand Prix car to win with a turbocharger. But as it stands, let's just kick it off with a incredible car in its own right, the Auto Union Type C with its monstrous V16 engine, or the only shadow to ever win a Grand Prix, the DN8 from its 1977 season, Gordon Murray's first car, the Brown BT44 F1 car, or is far more creative, Brown BT46B, the crazy suction fan car that Niki Lauda drove to victory in his only race before they voluntarily withdrew it so it didn't get banned and Bernie Ecclestone could take over all of Formula One. Most of the teams currently competing were there, so Williams brought a bunch of their cars, including the car so good even Villeneuve could win with it against a, let's be honest, subpar Ferrari. Although I don't think Villeneuve or Schumacher could win in this Alpine, I'm sorry, it's just not that good. Yikes. They're planning on switching to these guys' engines, though, perhaps, if their Renault engines go south. Mercedes are celebrating their 130 years of motorsports, so we have the Grand Prix from 1907 and the 120 horsepower. And then we have this Targa Florio version, which they painted red so the Italian fans wouldn't sabotage it. Pretty cunning strategy, I must concede. We got Juan Manuel Fangio's championship-winning W196, which is pretty incredible, but I would argue this Fangio W196 is more incredible because this is the Type Monza, aka the Streamliner. It's the only closed-wheeled car to ever win a Formula One Grand Prix, which it did 3 times. They only used it on the high-speed sons because there wasn't a rule back then about closed wheel versus open wheel, and therefore it has earned its spot in history for a unique record that will never be equaled or beaten. Now, Lotus didn't have a huge attendance, but they did have the 49 and the 77. The 77 I saw twice, once in its glorious phase and once in its more traditional Lotus sort of phase, where they were fixing it and doing maintenance on it. Very interesting to see the internals of a 70s F1 car. You don't get to see that too often. Not that you get to see 70s F1 cars very much at all. And then we have Ferrari. Starting out with the Alfa Romeo P3 that Enzo Ferrari ran back in the day before he joined and founded the Ferrari team itself with this 166 Ferrari from 1948 before the F1 championship was officially started. And then we have Niki Lauda, who showed up in the 70s with this car. This is his 1976 car. Probably the one that wasn't at the Nürburgring, since it's not a burned Hulk, but it is nice to see the 76 car, or the 74 car we're seeing here, that is in a bit better shape. I don't like the vent on top as much as the 76 iteration, but the packaging to fit that massive V12 in such a tiny car is honestly incredible. Seeing it with the top off and then with the top on, it's a wonderful experience and a true masterpiece of engineering. And having a 3-time world champion drive them is a nice bit of history, we'll put it that way. Now, this is not Alain Prost's Ferrari, this is Gerard Berger's Ferrari from 1989, the 640, although it does look a lot like the 641. And this is Michael Schumacher's Ferrari F2001. At the time, the most successful F1 season in history, broke all sorts of records for most points, subsequently demolished in the coming years. And this is the last Ferrari to win a championship. The F2007, driven by Kimi Räikkönen to the 2007 driver's title. Still, the Iceman, the last driver's champion, although Sebastian Vettel and his SF70H did give it a pretty good running in 2017, and they probably had the better car, but Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes were just in their absolute peak primes, and although this car is pretty fast, and Vettel is pretty fast, it wasn't enough. Now, McLaren were celebrating their 50th anniversary of their first championship, so they had their McLaren Indy car from that won the Indy 500 in 1974, as well as their first champion, Emerson Fittipaldi's and McLaren M23, that took both titles in 1974, which we might be talking about in a little bit. Just saying. Pretty convenient. Although I actually prefer this one. The MP4-1B, driven by Niki Lauda to his first victories in several years in 1982 during his comeback. The car that quite literally proved he could still be a world champion, and he solidified it 2 years later. Many years later, 1988, Ayrton Senna drove this MP4-4 to, at the time, the most successful F1 car of all time, until 2023. But it's still the fastest ever in terms of pure pace advantage over its rivals, and the only true equal playing field of Senna versus Prost, because by the time this car drove around 1991, Senna was an absolute beast and took the championship easily, while Prost was stuck in a terrible Ferrari that he got kicked out of because he said it was a piece of garbage. Some things never change at Ferrari. Now, speaking of terrible teams, McLaren's new car, the MCL, 38? Yeah, 38, is the fastest car on the grid right now, and that's why it's only won 2 Grand Prix. They clearly have some things to work on, but, you know, let's not worry about that and just enjoy the sounds.
Okay, that's my favorite.
Back in 1911 at 166 but these are 18.1 seconds, so
family connection, and we're celebrating the centenary of MG Cars.
The big one.
the Second World War. And after the Second World War, he decided to secularize himself
But Lewis Hamilton didn't take that driver's side. And people like the young Dane Reynolds, who wants to...
And there you have it. Some of the most legendary and historic vehicles ever driven by some of the greatest drivers of all time, whether they be the Beast of Turin speedrunners or the Sunbeam V12s, all the way up to 2021's greatest sports rivalries. These are incredible cars, and you think that I would end the series on such a high note, but as much fun as F1 can be, it's not my favorite motorsport, not by a long shot. So instead, I want to end my series on a personal high, completing a bucket list, if you will, at the rally stage. See you then.